Most people over 60 have been told the same thing about their gray hair. It's genetics. It's aging. It's inevitable. Accept it, dye it, or live with it. And for a significant portion of people, that's genuinely true. Genetics plays a real and primary role in when and how quickly hair loses its pigment. But here's what that explanation leaves out entirely. For a subset of people, the speed and extent of graying is being driven, at least in part, by something that has nothing to do with genetics. Something measurable. Something that researchers have been documenting in peer-reviewed journals for over a decade. Something that, in some cases, when corrected early enough, has been associated with partial restoration of natural color. Not a promise. Not a guarantee. A biological possibility that most people in their 60s have never been told about, because nobody ran the right tests. Today, we're covering 3 specific nutrients that published research has connected to hair pigmentation, what they do inside the follicle, why people over 60 are disproportionately likely to be low in at least one of them, and what an honest protocol looks like based on what the science actually supports. If you haven't subscribed yet, the bell is right there. The next video covers a specific natural extract that was tested directly against a prescription hair loss drug in a clinical trial. And the results were more nuanced than either side of that debate usually admits. Worth watching. But first, let's start with something that most people have never heard about. Because the real story of gray hair begins not in your genetics, but in your hair follicle's chemistry. Inside every hair follicle that produces colored hair, there are specialized cells called melanocytes. Their entire job is to manufacture melanin, the pigment that gives your hair its specific shade of black, brown, red, or blonde. Every time a new strand grows, melanocytes inject melanin into the developing hair shaft. That's what gives it color. Now here's what researchers discovered, and what most people never hear. In 2009, Dr. J.M. Wood and colleagues published a landmark study in the FASEB journal that changed how scientists understood the mechanism of graying. Using a spectroscopy technique that could measure chemical composition inside living hair, they documented something that had never been shown before. Gray and white hair shafts accumulate hydrogen peroxide, the same chemical used in salons to bleach hair, in millimolar concentrations. In plain language, graying hair follicles are bleaching themselves from the inside out. The study also found that in gray hair follicles, the expression of an enzyme called catalase, the enzyme responsible for breaking down hydrogen peroxide into harmless water and oxygen, was nearly absent. In pigmented hair follicles, catalase was present and active. In gray ones, it was gone. This is not a fringe finding. A 2013 review in the International Journal of Cosmetic Science by Cyberg expanded on this work, and a 2014 study in PLOS1 confirmed that reduced catalase expression in graying hair bulbs contributed to abnormal accumulation of free radicals and oxidative destruction of melanocytes. So the question researchers started asking was, what supports catalase activity in the follicle? And what might be depleting it? That's where the 3 nutrients come in. The first nutrient is vitamin B12. A 2025 comprehensive review published in the International Journal of Dermatology, PMC 21208612, examined premature hair graying from multiple angles, including nutritional factors. The authors identified vitamin B12 as one of the key elements in stabilizing the early growth phase of the hair follicle and supporting pigmentation. Multiple studies cited in that review found significantly lower serum B12 levels in individuals with premature graying compared to matched controls without graying. A 2016 study published in the International Journal of Trichology found that subjects with premature graying had significantly lower serum levels of B12, ferritin, and folic acid compared to age-matched controls. Here's the mechanism the research points to. B12 is essential for DNA synthesis and for the maintenance of healthy, rapidly dividing cells. Melanocytes are fast-dividing cells. When they're deprived of B12 at the cellular level, their ability to produce melanin becomes compromised. The follicle doesn't necessarily die, but the pigment factory inside it starts to malfunction. Now here's the part that's specific to people over 60, and it's documented in clinical literature going back decades. B12 absorption depends on a protein produced in the stomach called intrinsic factor. When intrinsic factor combines with B12, the resulting complex can be absorbed in the small intestine. But as we age, gastric acid production declines. Stomach lining changes. The production of intrinsic factor decreases. The result, documented in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition and confirmed in a 2026 review in MDPI on B12 absorption in older adults, is that even people eating a diet rich in B12 may be absorbing only a fraction of what their cells actually need. And here's the deceptive part. A standard serum B12 blood test measures what's circulating in the blood, not what's getting into cells. Someone can test within the normal reference range and still have functional deficiency at the cellular level. For melanocytes that depend on adequate cellular B12 to produce pigment, that gap matters. The practical implication, if B12 is the issue, the form of supplementation matters as much as the dose. Research on older adults supports sublingual methylcobalamin, a tablet dissolved under the tongue, as a way to bypass the gastric absorption problem entirely, delivering B12 directly into the bloodstream without depending on intrinsic factor. This is not a fringe suggestion. It's the recommendation supported by the 2026 MDPI absorption review and widely endorsed in functional medicine literature on aging. The second nutrient is copper. This one is less commonly discussed, but the biochemistry is straightforward and well established in the dermatological literature. Melanin is not produced spontaneously. It requires an enzyme called tyrosinase to catalyze the conversion of the amino acid tyrosine into melanin precursors. And tyrosinase cannot function without copper as a cofactor. When copper is adequate, tyrosinase is active, and melanin production can proceed. When copper is insufficient, tyrosinase activity is impaired, melanin synthesis slows, and the pigment that gives hair its color becomes scarce. This mechanism is documented in multiple publications, including the IP Indian Journal of Clinical and Experimental Dermatology, 2019, and the 2025 International Journal of Dermatology review that described an Iranian study finding associations between lower serum copper levels and premature graying. Important, honest context: significant copper deficiency as a cause of graying in otherwise healthy older adults is less common than B12 deficiency. It's more frequently documented in younger populations or in specific clinical scenarios. But the mechanism is real. And for a subset of people, particularly those who take high-dose zinc supplements daily without balancing their copper intake, it's worth evaluating. Here's the hidden connection. Zinc and copper compete for absorption in the gut. People who supplement heavily with zinc for immune support, which is extremely common in older adults, can inadvertently create a copper deficiency over time. This is a documented nutritional interaction, not a theoretical concern. If you take more than 40 mg of zinc daily on a regular basis, your copper levels may warrant checking. Foods that naturally support copper intake include cashews, sunflower seeds, lentils, and dark chocolate, none of which require supplementation, and all of which provide copper in a form the body can readily use. The third piece of the protocol is the one with the most established research behind it, and paradoxically, the one most people try incorrectly. A study examining nutritional factors in premature graying measured serum levels of ferritin, vitamin B12, and vitamin D3 in 60 patients with significant early graying and 60 healthy controls. The mean levels of all three were significantly lower in the graying group. Vitamin D3 insufficiency was found in 60% of the graying group, compared to 36.67% in the control group. Vitamin D receptors are present in hair follicles, and research suggests vitamin D may play a role in the normal cycling and function of follicular cells, including melanocytes. The exact mechanism linking vitamin D to pigmentation is still being studied, but the association between low vitamin D and accelerated graying has appeared consistently enough across studies to warrant attention. The practical challenge with vitamin D is the form and the context. Standard vitamin D supplements don't all perform equally. Vitamin D3 is consistently shown to be more bioavailable than D2, and absorption is enhanced when taken with dietary fat. More importantly, in someone who is severely deficient, supplementation alone may not be sufficient without addressing absorption issues or underlying health conditions that affect vitamin D metabolism. Sun exposure remains the most efficient way to produce vitamin D. 15 to 20 minutes of direct skin exposure in midday sun several times per week provides meaningful production for most people. In northern latitudes, or for individuals who spend most of their time indoors, this alone may explain chronic low levels that no amount of dietary intake fully corrects. Now, the honest framework for how to actually use this information. These 3 nutrients are not a protocol that reverses gray hair in people whose melanocytes have been fully depleted by decades of natural aging and genetic programming. That window is closed. No amount of B12, copper, or vitamin D restores color to follicles where the melanocyte stem cell population is exhausted. What the research suggests, carefully with appropriate uncertainty, is that in people where graying has accelerated beyond what genetics alone would predict, and where underlying deficiencies are contributing to that acceleration, correcting those deficiencies may support the function of remaining active melanocytes. In some cases, particularly when deficiency is caught early, before the melanocyte population is fully depleted, partial repigmentation of new growth has been observed. A case series published in the Journal of Clinical and Diagnostic Research described patients whose gray hairs showed darkening in new growth after several months of B12 supplementation. These were individuals with documented deficiency, recent onset of graying, and correction that came early enough to matter. Not everyone. Not a guaranteed outcome, but a documented biological response in a specific population. The practical protocol that emerges from the research is this. Step 1 is testing before supplementing. Ask your doctor for a panel that includes serum ferritin and B12, not just hemoglobin, along with vitamin D3 and serum copper, especially if you take zinc regularly. Understanding what's actually low is more useful than guessing. Step 2, if B12 is indicated, is choosing the right form. Sublingual methylcobalamin, not cyanocobalamin, which is the synthetic version the body must convert before using, dissolved under the tongue in the morning, before coffee, and before breakfast, allowing complete dissolution for maximum absorption directly into the bloodstream. Step 3 is building copper-supporting foods into your weekly diet without reaching for a supplement unless deficiency is confirmed, because excess copper creates its own problems. Step 4 is addressing vitamin D through sun exposure, where possible, with D3 supplementation as a secondary tool, taken with fat-containing food. Step 5, and this is the one most people skip, is patience measured in months, not weeks. Hair grows half an inch per month. Any change in new growth won't be visible at the tips of existing gray hair. It will appear, if it appears at all, at the roots gradually over a timeline of 3 to 6 months of consistent, accurate correction. Gray hair is not just a cosmetic inconvenience. When it accelerates beyond what your family history would suggest, when you look at your parents' timeline and realize yours doesn't match, that's the body communicating something worth investigating. It doesn't mean something is seriously wrong. It may simply mean that specific nutrients your follicles depend on have been running low long enough to affect their function. And that's something a targeted blood panel can answer in a way that no amount of speculation can. That's the difference between treating how your hair looks and understanding what your body is actually doing. If this raised questions you hadn't considered before, drop them in the comments. Have you ever had your copper levels checked specifically? Or had your B12 tested in a way that went beyond the standard serum panel? The conversation in the comments tends to surface things worth covering in future videos. Everything here is for educational purposes only and does not replace individualized medical advice. If you're considering changes to your supplement routine, especially B12 or vitamin D, and you're on medication or managing a health condition, speak with your doctor first. Some interactions matter. See you in the next one.